The National Desk, America's News, now.
Now on the National Desk, America's News now. In the hot seat, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas grilled on Capitol Hill as President Biden feels the pressure to shut down the border and diagnosing dangers, the risks from more teens using TikTok to figure out why they don't feel well. And cancer breakthrough, the fact-check team discusses a new blood test that may be able to detect pancreatic cancer sooner. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. We're glad you're here with us. On this Weekend Edition, we start with the crisis at the border and the Homeland Security Secretary in the hot seat.
Could you speak to any authorities that Congress has removed from you or the president since taking office?
Congressman,
Has Congress removed any authorities from you or the president since you've taken office?
Congressman, the point that you make with respect to Border
Patrol agents. The answer is
agents,
no. I'd also make the point that you have approximately 20% larger budget than Trump had.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas grilled on Capitol Hill with lawmakers pointing out nothing is stopping President Biden from enforcing existing border security laws. Now we're learning President Biden plans to do what he claimed he could not, use an executive order to close the border to some migrants by the end of the month. Axios reports Biden would use authority in Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which gives the president broad leeway to block entry of certain immigrants if it would be detrimental to U.S. national interests. He'd be taking a page from former President Trump, who has repeatedly leaned on that section. And this all happening as House Republicans get ready to deliver articles of impeachment against Mayorkas to the Senate on Monday. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, breaks down what Mayorkas told lawmakers when he took the hot seat on Capitol Hill.
Working to better secure the border comes with a massive price tag. The head of the Department of Homeland Security giving lawmakers a partial list of what that entails.
more immigration and customs enforcement personnel, more detention capacity, more funds for alternatives to detention, more transportation resources.
Alejandro Mayorkas telling the House Appropriations Homeland Security Subcommittee more than 630,000 people have been removed from the country in the last 11 months, as GOP lawmakers point out that more than 2 million others have been allowed to stay.
And your default policy seems to be to just let them in.
San Diego County has seen the numbers of migrants more than double in just 2 years, with local leaders warning it's putting their residents at risk.
I don't think it's out of the question to believe that a Hamas-style attack that happened October 7th could happen to us again, that another 9/11 style attack, or something we've never even seen before.
Other critics argue President Biden has the power to use executive action to shut down the border if the numbers get too high.
There's no guarantee that I have that power all by myself without legislation. And some have suggested I should just go ahead and try it. And if I get shut down by the court, I get shut down by the court.
One major complaint has been about sanctuary laws in places like California and New York, which not only require them to provide sanctuary for migrants, but prohibit local law enforcement from communicating with ICE, even about dangerous criminals in custody. It seems that Secretary Mayorkas may be considering changes to that aspect of the law.
I believe that when an individual poses a threat to public safety or national security, a local or state jurisdiction should cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement for the swift detention and removal of that individual.
A rare point of agreement amid a firestorm of criticism of the Biden administration's border policies. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzell.
It's now against the law for illegal migrants in Iowa to remain in the state if they were previously denied entry or deported from the U.S. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds signed the bill, saying she, quote, gave Iowa law enforcement the power to do what Joe Biden would not, deport illegal criminals to protect our state. Several illegal migrants from Venezuela are in custody accused of assaulting New York City police officers. Police say they were arresting shoplifting suspects when the group threw rocks at the officers and attacked them. New video of a group of migrants fighting with police officers. This is video body cam from police in Yonkers, New York at a migrant shelter. Police arresting several suspects after they got violent with staff members there. One female migrant can be seen trying to hit an officer. Police say officers responded to at least 100 similar calls since more than 250 migrant families moved in a year ago. We are monitoring concerns that Iran could launch an attack against Israel after Iran's leader issued some new threats. And now Israel's foreign minister warns the country will defend itself and strike Iran directly if that happens. Meantime, the head of U.S. Central Command, General Michael Kurilla, is set to visit Israel to work with leaders there in case Iran strikes. Some government officials warning Iran used the $6 billion that President Biden unfroze last year for terrorism.
What we've seen time and time from the Iranian regime is they fail to feed their people and they put the IRGC first. Any dollar they have will go towards their violent activity before they deal with their people. That's partially why almost none of the humanitarian money has been used for humanitarian purposes, is they don't care about getting drugs and food for their people.
And we now know an Israeli airstrike killed 3 sons of Hamas terror leader Ismail Haniyeh, who threatened to increase terror attacks against Israel. Right now, the fate of dozens of Israeli hostages remains in question. Hamas now claims it does not have 40 hostages to release as part of a temporary ceasefire deal with Israel. The admission raising concerns over how many of the hostages taken during the October 7th Hamas terror attack are still alive. Israel says 133 hostages out of the 240 abducted that day have yet to be released. Israel believes at least 33 are now dead. Former President Trump says he would not sign a federal ban on abortion after a recent Arizona Supreme Court ruling.
Mr. President, did Arizona go too far? Did Arizona go too far?
Yeah, they did, and that'll be straightened out. And as you know, it's all about states' rights. That'll be straightened out. And I'm sure that the governor and everybody else are going to bring it back into reason, and that will be taken care of, I think, very quickly.
The Arizona ruling criminalizes nearly all abortions with no exceptions for rape or incest, only if the mother's life is at risk. We'll have more on Trump's stance on abortion later in the show. An alarming health alert. Many women aren't getting regular mammograms because they can't afford it. A new CDC study found women with health-related social needs like being food insecure and social isolation were 20% less likely to get recommended mammograms. Breast cancer causes more than 40,000 deaths in women across the U.S. each year. Routine mammograms could significantly reduce that number. Pfizer is looking to expand its RSV vaccine approval for Americans as young as 18. It's called Abrysvo, and it was approved for those over the age of 60 last year. The pharmaceutical company says in a clinical trial, people between the ages of 18 to 59 had an immune response similar to the trial results for older adults. RSV is a common respiratory virus that typically causes cold-like symptoms. However, it can be serious for infants, older adults, and those with underlying chronic conditions. And taking a look back now at the life of O.J. Simpson and one of the most sensational court cases in Las Vegas history. His family announced he died of cancer at age 76. Simpson, accused of robbing 2 sports memorabilia dealers at the Palace Station. He was offered a plea deal but decided to roll the dice. The National Desk, Denise Roche, talked to former district attorney David Roger, who secured the conviction.
We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit a crime, guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, guilty.
This case had all of the evidence you could possibly want. You know, we had audio tape of O.J. Simpson planning the robbery. We had audio tape of the actual robbery.
David Rogers says it's a case that's impossible to forget. O.J. Simpson storming into the Palace Station in September 2007 and robbing 2 sports memorabilia dealers at gunpoint.
You ever see any weapons being used?
No.
Details Simpson would later dispute.
I mean, these are things that, you live with them in your house on the wall, you forget them. You don't see them, it's wallpaper. And these are things I hadn't seen in 10 years, and I was a little emotional.
The trial becoming one of the most watched court cases in Southern Nevada history.
He was signing autographs and taking photographs during recesses during the trial. People were outside of the courthouse waiting for him to arrive every day. But it was never personal. I never made it personal with the people who we were prosecuting.
After nearly 2 weeks of testimony, Simpson was convicted and sentenced to a maximum of 33 years in prison. He was paroled after 9.
Vote to grant parole when eligible, and that will conclude this hearing.
Thank you.
Settling in Nevada for one very specific reason.
You know, he had to stay in a state that protected his pension because his pensions from the NFL and the Screen Actors Guild was about $375,000 a year. Nevada law protects pensions, and so the Goldmans could not attach his pension.
The former NFL star and broadcaster's athletic achievements brought him worldwide fame, but of course, they were eclipsed by his 1995 acquittal in the killings of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. Pancreatic cancer accounted for over 8% of all cancer deaths in 2023, and trends indicate it will be the second leading cause of cancer death by 2030. I'm back with Courtney from the Fact Check team. It's tough to catch pancreatic cancer before it gets to an advanced stage, which makes it so deadly, but we understand that might change.
That's right, Dee Dee. There is a new blood test that was found to detect 97% of stage 1 and stage 2 pancreatic cancer cases. Researchers collected blood samples from nearly 1,000 people, some healthy and some with pancreatic cancer, and identified 8 RNA molecules that are found in cells that come from pancreatic cancer and 5 found in the blood of patients with pancreatic cancer. They used those to develop a genetic signature, and when they combined that with the protein commonly associated with pancreatic cancer, they were able to identify early stages.
Okay, so break down further, what exactly does this mean, especially in terms of options?
Well, once pancreatic cancer reaches stage 3, that means it has spread outside the pancreas, which makes it harder to operate on or treat. So if doctors are able to detect the cancer earlier, there will be more effective options for treatment. I do want to mention, though, that these results haven't been published yet. They were presented this week at an American Association for Cancer Research meeting, so they're considered preliminary, and more research is needed before the test can be offered to the public.
All right, Courtney, thank you. A lot of information here. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. Still ahead here on the National Desk, digging deeper. The new report shedding light on the FBI's data collection system, experts argue fails to paint an accurate picture of the state of public safety.
A new report shows just how much violent crime has gone up across the country and calls out the FBI for underreporting America's crime crisis, which former FBI officials say is misleading and deceptive. The Coalition for Law, Order, and Safety released its April 2024 report addressing America's crime crisis and found crime has risen dramatically in the past few years and points out the new FBI system does not match the same reports from local police jurisdictions. Joining us now is a member of the coalition who published that report, former Assistant FBI Director and Acting Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan. Good morning to you, sir. Great to see you, as always. You know, Mark, I was reading through this report, and the biggest thing that stood out to me was the fact that Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City, the 3 largest cities in our country, did not even submit crime data because the FBI relaxed requirements in 2022 on how cities can report or not report their statistics. Why did the FBI transition away from the system they'd been using for decades?
Yeah, I think they've been using a system for about 90 years, Jan. The new system is called NIBRS. The intent was they were hoping that was going to provide additional data on multiple offenses that were committed within a single incident, like robbery that went to homicide. And they are also hoping that was going to provide an additional context and level of detail in those offenses. Now, whether that's actually happened or not is arguable. But here's the issue that's not, is that the FBI underestimated the difficulty of transitioning the 17,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States to the new system. And the predictable result is many of these agencies simply did not provide the data under the new system. And the result was it took what has historically, as you mentioned, been a reliable national standard on crime data and trends, and now it's simply unreliable, Jan.
So you're saying the FBI compensated by essentially estimating crime statistics? I mean, why even have a federal database on actual figures if it's a guesstimation?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is the database is good to have. We need the database. The failure comes in and is to make a report, generate a report based on that database that you know is fundamentally flawed. It's the old garbage in, garbage out theory. And let me give you an example. In 2019, Jan, about 90% of the law enforcement agencies submitted crime data. Fast forward to 2021, less than 63% of those agencies reported crime data. And as you mentioned earlier, the big three, Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago last year submitted no data. And while the FBI's report has caveats, it's simply not enough. When you have over 40%, almost 40% of the agencies not provide the data, the report is fundamentally flawed. It should not have been reported in its current format.
And you can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. Just ahead, streets in chaos. Business owners in a West Coast city raising concerns about dangerous street racing and why they are the ones paying for it. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From South Carolina, protecting properties from squatters, to a substitute teacher arrested in Florida, or taking the pulse of America. But we start with Washington State trying to stop dangerous street races.
High speeds and outrageous behavior behind the wheel. As a crowd cheered on this weekend sideshow taking over a Wallingford intersection. Marks in the street now left in the road show where it happened, right outside Golden Oldies Records.
I can't afford to rebuild the shop.
Owner David Hickerson said 2 cars have already crashed through their store. So when he saw this video today,
and it's going to impact not just us, but, you know, all of the local community businesses.
These racers aren't just challenging each other.
This needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
They're also challenging a new Washington law. The expanded street racing statute took effect at the start of the year. It gives police the power to impound cars used in races.
We need to send a strong message to those that are putting others at risk by their reckless behavior.
A now fired substitute teacher is in even more trouble. 21-year-old Corey Pierce, who is currently behind bars, faces new sex crime charges. Accusations: he sexually battered a minor between 12 and 18 years old. Last Friday, Palm Beach County School District Police also charged Pierce with 1 count of an authority figure soliciting lewd conduct with a student at Woodlands Middle School. located in western Palm Beach County near Lake Worth Beach. School police arrested Pierce on March 29th. According to the arrest report, 2 students say they got messages from Pierce through social media and that he kissed them while in the classroom.
That's horrifying news because we trust these teachers with our kids. And for some teacher to take advantage of a kid.
School is supposed to be a safe place for kids to be at. It's supposed to make us feel safe while we're doing our daily errands, going to work, and it's supposed to be a learning environment for them.
After a lengthy legal process lasting nearly a year, Tammy Brinson evicted the squatters from her Berkeley County property.
It's very, very upsetting, and the anxiety is unbelievable as you're watching your property be damaged or you're having to pay bills for a property that you have absolutely no control over. It can really be financially devastating and also very, very emotionally taxing to try to get these people out.
Brinson and state lawmakers would like to see property rights reside with the owner of the property.
We've made it too difficult for a rightful property owner to be able to remove somebody.
Senator Josh Kimbrell is sponsoring Bill 1231 to allow property owners to essentially skip the eviction process.
The people who are trying to take possession back of their own home are having to go through an extensive and expensive process just to get possession of their own personal property or their private property back.
Straight ahead here on the National Desk, drug shortage, dwindling supplies forcing cancer patients to use less effective alternatives or delay treatment altogether. Chemotherapy drugs continue to remain in short supply with life and death consequences for adult patients. Now we're shedding light on a devastating new layer, the impact on thousands of children diagnosed with cancer in the U.S. each year. Spotlight on America's Lisa Fletcher reports.
Any patient being told the words that my 9-year-old had to hear is not okay.
Those words were out of the chemo drug that could save your life. Laura Bray and her daughter Abby, diagnosed with leukemia, would face that unthinkable scenario 3 times during the course of her treatment.
She said, well, do I die? No one had an answer for her, right? I didn't have an answer. So I just said, Abby, we're gonna try to find it.
Laura enlisted hundreds of friends and family who called every children's hospital searching for the drug Abby needed.
It worked, and once we did that, I was haunted. I couldn't sleep.
because countless other kids were being told their drugs weren't available. In fact, 75% of the 20 most essential pediatric cancer drugs have been short in the last 5 years.
These chemotherapy drugs, they're the backbones of curative and life-saving regimens for which we have no alternative. It is exceedingly rare that we can have an alternative.
Dr. Yoramunguru is a pediatric oncologist.
It's critical.
Unlike adults, he told us most kids with cancer, about 85%, can be cured, but it can't be done without the necessary drugs.
How is it possible that we run out of these critical care drugs for kids?
It's complicated. There's not a lot of drug companies that want to make them. They're not cheap to make, but they are reimbursed at a very low level.
Among them, methotrexate, used for kids with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, brain tumors, and leukemia. It's been in shortage since March 2023. The most common childhood cancer is acute lymphoblastic leukemia, one that requires 10 drugs and often years to treat. 8 of those 10 drugs have been in short supply over the past decade.
What's it like to tell a family, I think I can cure your child of cancer, but I don't have the drugs to do it?
It is one of the most frustrating and difficult discussions I've had, but you're handcuffed. You don't want to treat cancer with one hand behind your back. Cancer is hard.
The FDA and independent researchers have found these shortages caused relapses requiring more intensive, toxic chemotherapy, decreased enrollment in life-saving clinical trials, and patient deaths.
We can ensure no child will ask their parent, "Will I die if I don't get my medicine?"
Using her expertise as a business professor specializing in supply chains, Bray started Angels for Change, connecting hospitals, drug makers, distributors, doctors, and patients to work together to end drug shortages with the help of lawmakers.
The question is, are we going to do it? I didn't know drug shortages existed until this happened to my child in 2019, but they did 10 years before they had congressional hearings. So don't let this moment go away. Don't bring me back here in 10 years. We've got to do the work, and everyone has got to come to the table.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Still to come here on the National Desk, abortion stance. Former President Donald Trump clarifies where he stands on the polarizing issue. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Now on the National Desk, America's News Now. Online privacy. Find out how lawmakers plan on keeping your activities from being tracked. Plus, parents outraged after a Seattle public school teacher was reportedly investigated for using anti-Semitic curriculum in the classroom. And new details of Alec Baldwin's alleged behavior on the movie set where a crew member was shot dead. From the nation's capital, this is the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Thanks for being here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. We'll get to those stories in just a bit. But first, former President Donald Trump making headlines and reshaping the national conversation about abortion after announcing his platform's policy. The National Desk, Kayla Gaskins has more.
As we near the 2-year mark of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, abortion remains far from a settled issue in American politics. On Monday, Donald Trump clarifying where he stands.
Many people have asked me what my position is on abortion and abortion rights.
Publishing a video to Truth Social praising the conservative justices for putting an end to Roe.
For having the courage to allow this long-term, hard-fought battle to finally end.
Taking a stance on IVF treatments.
I strongly support the availability of IVF for couples who are trying to have a precious baby. What could be more beautiful or better than that?
As well as states versus federal rights to legislate abortion access.
Took it out of the federal hands and brought it into the hearts, minds, and vote of the people in each state.
Even adding in a comparison to Ronald Reagan.
Like Ronald Reagan, I am strongly in favor of exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother.
In response, President Biden releasing a statement writing, Trump is scrambling. He's worried that since he's the one responsible for overturning Roe, the voters will hold him accountable in 2024. Well, I have news for Donald. They will. Conservatives mixed in their responses. Some, like Representative Nancy Mace, applauding the former president. Senator Lindsey Graham, who supports a national abortion ban, respectfully disagrees with Trump, saying it should be up to the states. Meanwhile, Democrats still banking on the abortion issue, helping them in November.
We believe that women's reproductive freedom should be protected in this country.
Trump argues Democrats are the extreme ones when it comes to abortion for wanting looser restrictions. However, a new Fox News poll shows 59% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases. That's up from 44% just 2 years ago. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
Tesla owner Elon Musk facing multiple investigations over his company X. Brazil's Supreme Court is targeting him over alleged spreading of fake news. Justice Alexandre de Moraes is opening an additional investigation after Musk said X would not follow the court's orders to block certain accounts. Musk has been vocal on X about this, calling the judge a dictator and Brazil's Darth Vader, posting principles matter more than profit, and X supports the people of Brazil without regard to political affiliation, does Judge Moraes. And even directing Brazilian users to download a VPN to access X if it's shut down. 2 lawmakers from Washington state unveiled a plan to give all Americans a right to online privacy. A bipartisan deal would ban the transfer of your personal data to third parties and stop your online activity from being tracked without your consent. The National Desk, Michelle Esteban reports.
I get nervous. Who is selling my information? I don't even know who is selling it and where it's going.
It is the underbelly of the online world so many of us rely on daily. And August Frank says he's seen it firsthand through the digital marketing team at his job.
The amount of information that we can get on a person just based on their email address is insane. We need to do something to regulate that access.
That's exactly what brought this unusual pairing together, a bipartisan partnership between Senator Maria Cantwell and Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers. Together, they have unveiled a plan that would, for the first time, give all Americans a right to online privacy.
It is putting people back in control of their data, and it's prohibiting big tech from tracking and predicting and manipulating people's behaviors for profit.
It's big business. Senator Cantwell insists so much information being collected on Americans online, it's as if people are being profiled. And she worries bad actors might use that information against you.
If you have done substantial harm, then we offer a private right of action so you can bring a lawsuit forward.
If there's one thing that you would want to leave our viewers with in terms of make sure you always do this to protect your privacy.
Start learning about it, to educate yourself about privacy and how to protect yourself.
Industry experts outraged after a federal appeals court upheld the EPA's decision to let California set its own fuel emission standards. The 3-judge panel rejected a legal challenge from 17 Republican-led states who argue the EPA's waiver gives California an unconstitutional regulatory power denied to other states. They are expected to appeal the ruling. Tesla has settled a wrongful death lawsuit related to its autopilot system. Back in 2018, Walter Huang died in his Model X Tesla while autopilot was engaged. Family members argue the technology was not as safe as Tesla claimed and that Tesla knew this and didn't tell customers. And now even more Americans say they would not consider buying an electric car. Look at this breakdown here. 48% of Americans say they would not get an EV. That's up from 41% who felt that way a year ago. Parents across the country riled up right now and calling on Seattle Public Schools to fire a self-declared communist teacher who has made a series of controversial statements and social media posts. The president of Accuracy in Media, Adam Gillette, joined Jan Jeffcoat to discuss.
So the story went viral when you confronted Ian Golosh, a teacher at Chief South High School in Seattle. First, I want to mention this is a teacher who in the past had been very vocal on social media with his political beliefs, with his statements. He's faced a firestorm for months because of it. What specifically, though, did you ask him when you confronted him, and what was his response?
Well, he's been openly anti-Semitic on social media, and many times anti-Semites pretend that they're merely against genocide of Muslim people. So the first thing I asked him was, I checked your social media. How come you've never once posted about the plight of the Uyghur Muslims in China? Is that because they're being persecuted by your communist allies? He didn't have a good response to that at all.
And he also, you asked him also as well about what was happening in Gaza, correct? You asked him also, too, about the murder of women by Hamas at a music festival.
If he thought what was happening over there was genocide, and I asked him if he thought it was justified. And he immediately said yes. What happened on October 7th, in his words, was justified, which is what he had posted on social media before. But I thought if given the chance to correct the record with a camera and a microphone in front of his class, which he brought out to meet with us in front of his high school, I thought he might have a wiser answer. But no, to his credit, he was consistent and said that the terrorism that occurred on October 7th was justified. I asked him if the rape of women was justified, and he said yes. And he said, well, no, resistance is justified, yes.
Has he responded to your posts since they've gone viral?
You know, I can't say that he has directly responded, but I cannot say that my hate mail and my death threats that I get via email and on social media have increased quite a bit, with some horribly disturbing messages ever since we confronted Golosh last week.
What's been the response, though, from those who have supported you? And what are some of the comments that you're getting right now from those who actually are siding with this teacher?
Well, it's been wild to see. You know, the disparity in the response is incredible. First of all, I was swatted the next day, and I haven't been swatted since November. For those who don't know, swatting is when someone calls your local law enforcement agency and claims something like you've got a gun to your wife's head so that armed agents storm your home, and if you move improperly, they might kill you. You know, I had that happen because of our activism 9 times in October and November. Hasn't happened since, but within 24 hours of going after Ian Golosh, I was swatted again and began receiving a ton more death threats. Of course, the response from students and parents in the area was overwhelmingly supportive. One student ran ahead of his class to tell me how he and his parents are shocked that Golosh hasn't been fired yet. Other students echoed the same thing, and we got a significant amount of support on social media. Parents rightfully are outraged, and this speaks to the major problem with public education. Imagine being geographically assigned to a school with an anti-Semite.
And you can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. Lawmakers are demanding you see all communications between federal investigators and big tech. House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan sent letters to the Justice Department and the FBI, calling on them to produce records of interactions with 5 big tech companies: Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft. House investigators are looking at any coordination to censor content online during the 2020 election. The FAA now investigating Boeing after a former engineer turned whistleblower stepped forward with concerns involving the company's 777 and 787 Dreamliner jets. The engineer alleges Boeing took shortcuts when it made the planes, potentially causing both to suddenly fail. He warns there could be as many as 1,000 787s impacted and up to 400 777s affected. The company said the claims were inaccurate. What's old is new again as Delta Airlines returns to numbered boarding zones, downgrading Diamond Elite flyers. Delta did away with zones in 2019 and started calling passengers by category names. While airlines are always looking to optimize their boarding process, and Delta is taking a play out of American and United's handbooks. Starting next month, Delta will return to numbered zones in attempts to make boarding simpler and clearer. Norfolk Southern agreed to pay $600 million in class action settlement 1 year after that fiery train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. If approved by the court, the agreement will resolve all class action claims within a 20-mile radius from the derailment and all personal injury claims within a 10-mile radius. Residents say despite Norfolk Southern paying up, they remain worried the funds won't go far enough to cover future health complications.
There are people who are very angry over what happened. There are people, and I'm one of the second group, it was an accident. I mean, this didn't benefit anybody. It's a horrible accident, and like all accidents, it was probably preventable had you known what was going to happen, but that's hindsight.
Norfolk Southern says residents and businesses will be able to use the funds any way they see fit. Payments could begin by the end of the year. In New Mexico, special prosecutors claim actor Alec Baldwin had no control of his emotions on the Rust movie set. In new legal filings, prosecutors say Baldwin's behavior on set contributed to safety compromises, which led to the deadly shooting of the film's cinematographer Halyna Hutchins in 2021. They claim the actor's rushing of the crew on set routinely compromised safety. In January, Baldwin pleaded not guilty to an involuntary manslaughter charge. He has not commented on the new filing. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis joined local law enforcement to impose tougher punishments for shoplifters. He signed a bill that increases the penalties for retail theft, porch piracy, and inciting looting through social media. DeSantis says the bill is yet another step his administration is taking to keep Florida's residents and businesses safe. So to come here on the National Desk, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, including top issues on voters' minds as they cast their vote in the presidential election.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, reporting on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. Our team of correspondents is here to share their insights and the stories they've been covering. Abortion front and center in the presidential race this past week. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, how are Democrats trying to use this issue to their advantage?
Well, Steve, they're definitely trying to turn this into a political weapon. Abortion is seen as perhaps Republicans' biggest weak spot this November, especially in those competitive races. And that would include the top of the ticket. So the presidential race and Donald Trump getting hit pretty hard here. The Wall Street Journal poll showed that voters trust President Biden on abortion noticeably more than they trust Donald Trump on the issue. Biden getting 45% of that, and Donald Trump getting just about 33% of that. So now Democrats are trying to see how can they use this to their advantage. Arizona handed them basically a gift this week. The Arizona Supreme Court ruling that the state could enforce a law from the 1800s that effectively bans abortion in the state. So now we're seeing more attack ads coming out against Republicans. President Biden, actually, his reelection campaign put together a separate attack ad blaming Donald Trump personally for a woman in Texas who almost died because she was denied an abortion. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're already seeing it ramp up. We'll probably see even more of that as November gets even closer.
Yeah, and Kayla, as Republicans scramble to figure out their messaging on abortion, they're staying on offense on issues that President Biden is struggling with.
That's right. So taking a look at the same Wall Street Journal poll that came out, it actually talked to voters at the end of March. So this is relatively recent. And you'll notice that abortion is practically the only key issue that Biden leads Donald Trump on. So Trump is leading on immigration. He's leading on the economy and securing the border. And Steve, he's also leading on the perception of having the physical and mental fitness that it takes to become president of the United States and to actually do the job. So now Republicans are trying to take a hold of that ammunition themselves. We saw Donald Trump put out some attack ads against President Biden asking, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Going over all of the negative coverage of how Americans are feeling about the economy and how far they feel their dollars are going, which does not bode well for Biden. And then there was a separate Quinnipiac poll, Steve, which shows that the economy and immigration right now are the two biggest issues. What voters see are the two most pressing issues facing the country today. And that same Quinnipiac poll, abortion, only 3% said abortion was the biggest issue.
And speaking of immigration and the border, national correspondent Christine Frizzell, you'll be heading to Arizona soon to report on the migrant crisis. But back here in D.C., the president and his Secretary of Homeland Security still being grilled about their response to the crisis at the border.
Yeah, a few things there, Steve. First of all, Arizona has really seen a huge uptick in the number of migrants coming to this region because Texas has sort of been cracking down, using their own troops, their own resources to better secure their border. So a lot of migrants are coming through Arizona right now. We're going to visit the Tucson sector, which is one of the busiest. Now, getting to Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, this was supposed to be the week where we saw 11 House Republican impeachment managers in a very dramatic fashion walk across the Capitol and deliver those articles of impeachment to the Senate. It was supposed to happen on Wednesday. There were some pleas from GOP senators saying, you know what, you got to wait. Let's hold this off, because if they would have done this on Wednesday, then they would have kind of taken it up on Thursday, which is the day that, as we know, working in Washington, that everyone sort of leaves town. So they were worried that not enough people would be in attendance. Senate Democrats have already said that, if they even have an impeachment trial, that it's going to be very speedy and expeditious. They want to be done with this, whereas, House Republicans and Senate Republicans want to drag this out. They want to keep the issue of border security in the spotlight. As Kayla just previously mentioned, it's a top issue for voters. It's something that President Joe Biden continuously has low marks in. So they want to keep this up. They want to blame Secretary Mayorkas for not only the huge numbers of migrants coming to the country, but for a problem they say has detrimentally and massively impacted U.S. national security.
Christine, Kayla, as always, top-notch reporting. Thank you both for your hard work. Back to you.
So to come, stripped and stolen. Residents calling on state lawmakers to end an epidemic of copper wire thefts, crippling businesses in Nevada. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. including a smash and grab in Seattle. But first, the aftermath of a devastating hailstorm in Texas.
Hours after hail pummeled Marble Falls, dark clouds have workers racing to cover windows and prevent any more possible damage. At the falls on the Colorado Museum, it looked like the storm threw baseballs at about 20 windows. Next door at Marble Falls Elementary, a patchwork of hail damage has already been covered. 36 windows were busted, and the school sign took a couple of direct hits.
Way bigger than what we've seen in the past years. You know, this was anywhere from pea-sized to softball-sized hail.
The Life Marble Falls Church lost a long row of windows to the storm. Plywood and plastic sheets are going up here and across the city as people start repairing windows, roofs, and everything else that was targeted by the hailstorm.
Surveillance cameras at Forbidden Cannabis Club captured this coordinated effort of about a dozen people seen waiting outside the store with shopping bags, ready to do a very different kind of shopping, using a car to smash through the front of the store multiple times before several people run inside grabbing everything they can. All in all, an estimated tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. And store manager Austin Bren says it's not the first time.
It's very, very rare that there are harsh enough penalties. They know, they're young, they're quick, they're in and out, and most of them just get let off. You know, they get let out on bail and they go right back out and they do it again.
Bren says he's been looking into putting in extra security measures like drop-down doors, but says trying to get other measures like bollards are very time-consuming to get approved by the city.
Almost everybody who lives like in this radius of the bar, they'll walk over here. Most people stroll home.
Here's the problem. Street lights in the area aren't always working. Copper thieves ripping out wire and leaving the neighborhood in the dark. County Commissioner Tig Segerbloom,
it's really a mess,
is fed up too.
We're working with the scrap metal dealers to make sure that they don't take this stuff. And work with the cops to try to stop people.
This week, crews with County Public Works are replacing wire in this area for the 5th time in the past year. Every light pole on Lamb from Charleston to Sahara has been hit. But this time, the wire isn't going underground. Instead, it's being strung pole to pole using aluminum materials instead of copper.
We've tried many different things. We've tried locking covers. We've tried also, gluing pole box lids shut, and they just defeated all of that.
Still ahead, did you see the solar eclipse this week, or maybe you missed it? Well, we're going to let you know how long you'll have to wait to see the next one in the U.S. For the first time ever, more people tuned into the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship than the men's this year. According to Nielsen, UConn's victory over Purdue last night in the men's final averaged 14.82 million viewers. That was earlier this week, but 18.87 million people tuned into South Carolina win over Iowa in the women's final. The WNBA hopes the hype carries into the pros as Iowa star Caitlin Clark enters the draft. She is expected to be the #1 pick next week, going to Indiana. Finally, here on the National Desk, mark your calendars. The next solar eclipse in America is on Saturday, August 12th, 2044. That's more than 2 decades away, but a lot of folks who saw last week's eclipse are ready for another.
Wherever it is in 2044, it's truly amazing. I've never seen anything like it before.
I wish it happened every day.
It was amazing. It was incredible. It was beautiful. It was really nice. I'm glad I was here.
Something bringing all generations together. Just after the eclipse, Google searches about injured eyes surged online. Ophthalmologists have warned staring at the sun during eclipse, or quite frankly, any time without the proper eyewear, can lead to permanent eye damage. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.